I want to bring in now the AU Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security, Ambassador Bankole Adeoye. He joins me now from Nairobi, Kenya. Ambassador Adeoye, thank you for joining me on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
The coup in Sudan is the third to occur in Africa within a year. What is the African Union doing to stem the tide of toppled governments in Africa?
The resurgence of military takeover is very regrettable. And the African Union continues to stand ready and firm based on its institutional and normative instruments. As you are aware, the African Union has zero tolerance for military takeover. And it is one of the most important instruments based on its Constitutive Act, its African Charter on Democracy, Elections, and Governance, the protocol establishing the Peace and Security Council itself, and of course, the Lome Declaration. These normative instruments have been activated for the cases of Mali, for Guinea, and now, most recently, Sudan. And that is why the three countries in question have been suspended by the Peace and Security Council, which is the decision-making organ on peace and security. The African Union stands ready to continue to work with international partners, with the regional economic communities in the case of Sudan, IGAD, to make sure that civilian-led transition is restored without further delay. But we must continue to push and pressurize the military leaders, the new authorities in Khartoum, to see the most important way of finding a lasting solution to the recurrence of military takeover in the Sudan or in any of our member states. But you must be assured that African Union member states, totally without exception, continue to push and condemn very strongly any unconstitutional changes of government. The era of military dictatorship is over on the African continent, and it is a new Africa that we want. The Africa that we want, based on Agenda 2063, must be activated by all democracy-loving, peace-loving member states of the Union.
So, you say this and it sounds really convincing, but you've had 3 coups in 1 year. And then you talk about pushing on Sudan to restore a democratic governance. Does that include negotiating with the coup leader, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan?
I will not call it negotiation, but rather consultation. The member states in question, Sudan, Mali, as well as Guinea, have been suspended. And indeed, the Peace and Security Council is also mandated by its protocol to consider, when necessary, targeted punitive sanctions, which could include many other areas of sanctions. But what is necessary is that consultations are ongoing with every stakeholder, knowing fully well that we must continue to protect the rights of all Sudanese, their rights to protect, their right to free assembly, their right and their hunger for democracy. We must also know that we are also consulting with the United Nations, with IGAD, the regional economic community involved, and all other stakeholders, knowing fully well that the pressure must be placed on the Sudanese military to maintain the current constitutional declaration, which the African Union was the main architect in 2019 when the first coup happened following the overthrow of then President Omar Bashir. So today, the African Union, through the Peace and Security Council, the Commission, the chairperson of the Commission, have continued to emphasize consultations and dialogue to make sure that the military leaders in Sudan abide by the agreement signed in 2019, including that signed in 2020, the Juba Agreement. These instruments have established what you can call a political cohabitation system, where the Sovereign Council, made up of mainly military leaders, as well as the Prime Minister leading the Civilian Transitional Authority.
We'll take a short break. My conversation with Ambassador Bankole Adeoye continues shortly. Stay with us. Just last week, the ECOWAS representative in Mali was kicked out because the military said it was involved, in activities not fitting his position. And does the AU have a representative in Mali and in Guinea helping with negotiations, or, as you say, the talks behind the scenes, or is the union also leaving that to ECOWAS to handle?
It's a collective work, but the AU definitely as a high representative, what is called the special representative of the chairperson of the commission based in Bamako, in Mali, and at the headship of the AU mission to the Sahel. And that means working closely with the government of Mali, as well as with all stakeholders, women, youth groups, and of course, ECOWAS, particularly former President Goodluck Jonathan, who is the mediator, special envoy of ECOWAS for Mali. We are all in this together as stakeholders at intergovernmental level and national, regional leaders, knowing fully well that we have to continue to make sure that the specter of military takeover does not become the norm. The continent is already convinced, the youth are convinced about the freedom they enjoy, the fundamental freedoms that come with democracy, and the military will not take this over from us at this time. And this is why the African Union, through the Peace and Security Council, as well as all the Commission as well, is committed that we have to push and retain our zero tolerance for unconstitutional changes of government.
Weeks ago, the African Union appointed a former Nigerian President, Olusegun Obasanjo, as special envoy to Ethiopia. At the last we heard, he was consulting with international partners. Is there any progress regarding his mission in the country? As you know, there's been fighting in the Tigray region in recent days, and they may be worsening. The Ethiopian army is conducting regular airstrikes on the capital, Mekele.
The Horn of Africa is one region that the AU-wide system has been concerned with, from terrorism to violent extremism, the ideology of hate, long-running civil war, human trafficking, climate security issues. And this is why, in its wisdom, the chairperson of the commission, His Excellency Musa Faki Mahamat, appointed former President Olusegun Obasanjo as High Representative for the region. This is the first time in a long time in the history of the African Union that a former leader has been appointed to cover a region. And that shows that the African Union believes in his experience, in his wisdom, and his reach. And I believe this is what he has started to do. And just last week, the Peace and Security Council held a session and reviewed his inception report. He has started consultations in the region, particularly with the leaders in Ethiopia, the stakeholders in Sudan and Djibouti. And we believe that he will be also in the nearest future be engaging with leaders in the region. The most important factor that I will see in his appointment is that African solutions to African problems must be the centerpiece of his engagements. And of course, in partnership with the international actors, those with interests in the region and beyond, it is necessary that we see progress being made on a steady basis.
You know that the AU has come under heavy criticism recently. A lot of people are saying that the AU appears helpless when it comes to political crisis on the continent. What is your response to this criticism?
Absolutely not. The AU remains seized of these matters. The AU stands ready to continue to work with the international community, with its member states, with its regional blocs, to ensure that peace, security, stability, premised on democracy, multi-party democracy, good governance will become the order of the day. It is necessary that we see that the AU remains a union, not only of governments, but a union of people. And that is why the AU cannot stand helplessly watching these events unfold. We are working with partners day and night, 24/7, to make sure that we return to the democratic norms, that the wave we saw in the beginning of the new millennium. And this is why the African Union stands ready. Our department, Political Affairs, Peace and Security, is continuing to work with all stakeholders in order to make sure that peace reigns. And of course, we see effective governance that will lead to peace dividends in the long term.
But are you seeing the results? You know, there's partnerships and these negotiations going on. Are you seeing the results?
The results are trickling in. And I want to assure you that the political transition in many of these countries, in Guinea, in Mali, in Sudan, in Gambia, the elections that we see, that we have witnessed, that we have monitored and observed, show that the youth remain the center for the change, the change that we are inspiring on the continent. And that change is not just a holistic work to be done by the African Union. It is collective. It is universal. And with the technology that we see, the robustness of our leaders, and the normative frameworks that we need to activate and implement without delay, I believe there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Well, Ambassador Adeoye, we'll have to take your words to task and revisit these issues later because there will be developments. Thank you again for speaking with me on Diplomatic Channel.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.